I'm Lauren-Jane. Welcome to my channel. If you are new, welcome back if you are not. With me today is Dr. Sarah Nichols. I'm sure you've met her before. She is my friend from med school. And today we are going to be talking about what I'm calling the ultimate guide to graduate entry medicine. And I'm calling it the ultimate guide because we went, we did it, we moved on, and we have all of that perspective. So welcome, Sarah.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yay, she's here. I've had Sarah on before, and it's always lovely to see Sarah. So today we're talking about graduate entry medicine. So when I initially messaged Sarah, I think I was in a bit of denial actually, because I was like, let's do 10 years on. 11, we are older than we think we are. Please get yourself a drink if you haven't got one. This is going to be like a cozy chat with Sarah and I about our experiences of applying to graduate entry medicine, what graduate entry medicine was actually like, and how the kind of stead that it's given us in the world of both foundation doctors and beyond there. So for those of you who don't know, Dr. Sarah Nichols went and did graduate entry medicine from a biomedical sciences background, graduated, came all the way through, did foundation, and then worked in ED as the ED doc. And now she is the one that props the rest of us up because she does the Thriving Medics Club, which is awesome, and talks a lot around our well-being and burnout, which is actually really important to me because that is kind of some of the reason why I started doing my own social media, because of some of the stories that were coming out and kind of the way some of our colleagues felt. So yeah, Sarah, please tell us, how did you get to graduate entry medicine?
Well, thanks for that intro. And also, like, I feel like I'm in a bit of denial about the fact that it's been 11 years as well. I definitely feel like it's gone by. You know, when you were younger and you heard older people saying like, "Oh, it felt like it was yesterday," and I feel like that about us starting entry medicine. It's
No,
crazy how quickly it's gone.
Sarah,
But so much has happened in that time.
no, Sarah, so I have to I don't remind you about this, but one of our colleagues had a family and he moved to Nottingham to do graduate entry medicine. And he actually left the day that the course started because his wife had a baby, literally the first day of graduate entry medicine. And that child is now in secondary school.
Ah, ah. That's wild. So
It's
crazy. So, yeah, I came into graduate entry medicine from, like you said, biomedical science. So it sounds like a fairly conventional route. But what happened to me, or what happened in my story, was that I didn't get the best A-level grades. You know, I got amazing GCSEs, and then my A-levels I kind of messed up a bit. I discovered boys and I started going out with my friends, and I thought I could just wing my A-levels. And I was working a part-time job, not really focusing on my studies. And before I knew it, I sat my exams, didn't get the best results, and I was like, oh no, my plan of becoming a doctor and going to medical school has been scuppered by my lack of effort. So I did manage to get myself a place in biomedical science, and I did that degree. It was really hard work and a lot more intense than I expected. But as I was going through my biomed degree, they kind of in where I did my degree, they were kind of pushing us to go towards a career in research, to go into PhD, get a PhD and go into research. And so I changed my plans a little bit while I was there, and I thought, maybe I'll go and work in a research lab. Went and did a bit of research work and hated every minute of it. And I just kept coming back to this idea of doing medicine. But I think once I'd finished my degree, my biomed degree, I was like, really tired, really exhausted, and I was just searching for other options. So I was thinking about, could I go and be a teacher? Could I go and work in, go and get a grad scheme job, go and do something else? So I was looking for every other option. And long story short, I just kept coming back to medicine, and something inside me told me I needed to apply. Um, Even though it felt scary going and doing another 4 years of studying while all my friends were getting themselves, getting their foot in the door of these big careers, these fancy jobs in London and that kind of thing. So I took a year out after my biomed degree, applied, got into medicine, and the first time round, which blew me away. And that's how I ended up doing graduate entry medicine.
So it's a very different kind of route than mine. I'm not going to go into it too much because I've made a complete video on this topic, but I came from a non-science background. And so I came from theology straight into GEM. It took me a couple of rounds to get in, I think 2 cycles, definitely 3 hits at the GAMSAT because I really struggled with that. And I think because of the difference in Sarah and I with the non-science background, it was just like, whew, and it was really difficult. So we both ended up, but we both ended up on the same course. And I actually remember you being a real baby. I remember thinking that you were such a baby because one of the questions that people always ask me about graduate entry medicine, and it's a fear I think a lot of people have, is, and I don't know if you hear this too, Sarah, am I too old to go and do graduate entry medicine? And people always want to know what's the age of that cohort. And in terms of our cohort, I was 25. I think you were 21, maybe.
No, I was 23.
Oh, okay. You were 23. Okay. I remember,
Still very young though.
yeah, no. So I remember thinking that you were an outlier in that cohort and that most people were older. I felt like one of the younger ones. I think most people were around the age of about 26, 27 in our cohort and upwards. There was one guy, I think, who was in his 40s.
Yeah, 42.
Yes. So there was a whole spectrum. I think we always talk about the outliers, don't we? But I think the majority of people were in their late 20s. And one of the great things about graduate entry medicine is you get to meet all sorts of people. Like, there was, me who I hadn't had a profession really. Sarah, you hadn't had a profession really, but we had like a nurse, there was a lawyer, um, all kinds of different things. And for me, one of the great things about graduate entry medicine is you kind of made me feel anyway like a better doctor because you learn from all of these really interesting people. So we've now started graduate entry medicine, and a quick kind of summary of what grad entry med is it's a 4-year course, and the year that you are losing as compared to undergraduate medicine is in the first portion, the preclinical portion. So normal medicine is 2.5 years of preclinical and 2.5 of clinical. Graduate entry is 1.5 and 2.5. And so everything that you're losing means that what you are doing is a very condensed first 1.5 years. And if you can get through that, you're kind of going to be the same as everyone else. You're just in the general pool. So with that in mind, Sarah, how did you find those first 1.5 years?
Really intense. Really, really intense. I was quite, I was so excited to get into medical school. And I remember walking in every day thinking, I can't believe I'm here. Like I'm living this dream. And I'd worked as a healthcare assistant to try and help me with my medical school application. And I'd actually done some shifts at the hospital that we did our GEM training at. And I remember walking there as a healthcare assistant in my little uniform, thinking one day I might be walking here as a med student and maybe even as a doctor. And like walking into GEM, as a medical student, I was just like, oh, this feels so incredible. And so that like amazement and feeling of I get to do this really carried me through
Yeah.
the hardship and the struggle that is GEM. It is so flipping hard for me, what it was for me. And I came from it with like you've mentioned, with a science background, and I found it hard. So it must be even harder when you don't have a science background.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I think I mean, it was hard. I think for all medical students, whether undergrad or postgrad, I mean, having done a humanities degree, you do like 11 hours of teaching and then you kind of go to the library if you want, it's all very casual. I don't think med students ever get a proper university experience because it is like a full-time job. And one of the places that GEM cuts corners is you get short holidays. So that's part of the place that it's coming from. But yeah, I mean, I think whatever background you're coming from, it's intense. One of the things that I really liked about GEM, and I must clarify here, is that because there is some confusion about this. So when people say GEM, sometimes, and I think Sarah and I use it interchangeably, sometimes when we say GEM, we mean the entire 4-year degree. Sometimes when we say GEM, we mean that first preclinical phase, because after that, no one really refers to you as a GEM, you're just a med student. So when we say GEM was really difficult, I think we mean the preclinical phase. So our GEM was a PBL course, so it was a problem-based learning course, which means that the structure of our week would be that there would be a problem. So it would be like lung cancer, and then all of your content, whether it be communication, anatomy, physiology, examination, would all be around the same case, and then you would pull that all together in problem-based learning, and you would have a case, and you would work through it and do presentations and things like that. And it was really fun. I loved that. But one of the things that I really loved about it is, though it was really intense, I felt like we were all in it together, especially because you have a PBL room. So there'll be like 8 or 9 of you in a group. And there's really a feeling like, oh my God, this is so difficult. But the lecturers were around all the time. You've got your PBL rooms to revise. And I definitely felt like really well supported. And it's honestly one of the best times of my life, I think, those first 1.5 years, despite being insanely difficult. I definitely felt like people were like, it's like going to the Olympics. It's like you've got your trainers like, this is crazy, but we're doing it. And that is how I felt. And is that how you felt? Like,
Yeah,
well,
definitely. I would 100% agree that it was one of the hardest things, the hardest times of my life for various reasons, but also, like you said, one of the best. And I feel kind of nostalgic thinking about that because we really were all in it together. And you come out of it feeling like, oh, we did that. Like we got through that as a team. And I think problem-based learning, those PBL groups, you're in like a little cohort of 8, and then you switch around through the year. And that just brings you closer together and gets you working with different people and different personalities, and it's really about collaborative learning. And I
yeah.
really enjoyed that because my I don't know if your undergrad degree was a bit like this, but ours was, although we did labs and we did stuff that was meant to be working together and working in teams and coming up with joint presentations, really my undergrad was very solitary. You go to your lectures, you learn the stuff, you go home and you study and you read loads of research papers, blah blah blah. And GEM wasn't like that. There is obviously a lot of solo study to be done, but they really encourage you to work together, and PBL really facilitates that. And it opened my eyes to a new way of learning. Like my
Yeah.
usual way of learning before was like, get my head down. It's something you struggle through on your own, and this is something that you've just got to get through. Whereas in PBL, it's like, no, we're all in it together. And like, oh, you don't understand that. How about thinking about it in this way? And I really enjoyed that.
I liked that too. And I think I suffered after we graduated from GEM, because after kind of joining the pool of the undergrads, I felt very much like I was on my own, and that I almost felt, I'm going to use the word incubator to describe GEM. Like I felt like, because there was at Nottingham, there's like a dedicated facility over at Derby, and it's only for the GEMs. And so you're kind of with your own staff day after day and your own kind of people. And then as soon as you kind of graduate from that, you're kind of on your own. In I don't know how big our cohort was, but it must have been presumably pretty massive. And I did feel like I was floating a little bit after that. But I think when I think about GEM, the question that always comes to mind is, did we lack anything through not doing the undergraduate course? And the only thing that kind of comes to mind, it's difficult to ask you, Sarah, like, what did you miss from something you didn't do because you haven't lived it? But I was really disappointed that we didn't do proper anatomical dissection. And I don't know if that's because I'm a surgeon, but I remember on like our introductory day to graduate entry medicine, I was like, because like, there was like the older gems there to mix with us so we could ask questions. And I was like, oh, how does it feel to, like cut? And they were like, oh, we don't do dissection here. We only do prosection. You did know that, didn't you? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, I knew that. I didn't know that. And I think it's almost a rite of passage for a lot of medical students to, I guess they tend to they have a cadaver that's allocated to them, don't they? And they kind of use that for over a year. And we didn't get that. And that's literally the only thing that I can think of, if I really scrape the annals of my brain, that I missed out on versus doing undergrad. Is there anything that I guess people must ask you it from time to time, is there anything that would have pulled you towards undergrad?
I thought about it an awful lot because I had so desperately wanted to do undergrad and obviously, like I said, didn't get the grades. And life has this funny way of working out, doesn't it? And I'm actually so pleased that it has worked out this way, because I think in my heart of hearts I wouldn't have been ready to go and study medicine. I wouldn't have had the emotional maturity to be able to take on board all of the stuff that you have to take on board to become a doctor. So in terms of like, I have no regrets in how things have turned out, and I I don't think, just from comparing the undergrads in the undergrad course where we went versus the GEM course, I don't think there was anything that we really missed out on. In fact, I think it might have been the other way round, that the undergrads missed out on a lot of the experience we had, being that, having the PBL, being in those groups, having that dedicated environment just for us, and feeling like you said, feeling like you're in this incubator together. And so, yeah, I think it's probably the other way round.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to say, I mean, I've not done the undergrad course, so I can't comment on it. But certainly, when we did graduate, a lot of people said that they found graduates much more confident in their delivery of things like communication skills, because there is a lot of maturity that you need to be a doctor. Do you agree? Like, it's a
Yeah.
complicated job for someone who is 22 and has lived at home and then gone to university. And those guys they're amazing, they're incredible. But definitely
Mm,
in terms of your ability to talk to people, I think that's something that grows when you've had other jobs, when you've been around, like
yeah.
a waitress, I worked in banks and things like that. So I've certainly been around. So my next question for you is, and I don't think we can move on from talking about the GEM portion of the course without talking about the word termination, which is one of the like only really negative parts of GEM for me, was that you had to pass an exam at the 1 year point and you had to pass an exam at the 18-month point in order to graduate onto the main thing. And like day one, we got their introduction. They use this word constantly, termination. We don't want you to be terminated. And it's a frightening proposition, like Sarah's talked about, desperately wanting to be on this course, you rock up and then it's intense, it's so much hard work, and there's a chance that you could get cut from this course. Is that right?
Yeah. And not only cut from the course, but I believe stopped from going to other medical schools after that.
No, I didn't know that. So
Hmm.
I know there was a guy who was in my PBL group who didn't make it on at the 18-month point. Um, but I didn't know that you couldn't therefore. It sounds really harsh, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
Kind of the threat of that throughout GEM. Now I look back, I'm like, oh, it must have been fine. But at the time, it was fine. It was fine.
Yeah. It
And
was not fine.
it was not. Oh God, it's all fun. I used that meme in my last video, and I'm thinking I'm going to put it in here as well. But it was really hard work, and the threat of being terminated did weigh on me throughout those 18 months, especially when we did modules like limbs and back, which was like the anatomy.
Oh,
It was like, oh, give it.
oh, I get chills thinking about it.
That was like, I'm pretty
My
sure.
least favorite.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure in our second year they chased limbs and back with neurosurgery, and at that point I was just like,
Evil.
why am I here? Yeah, so that for me was probably the only huge negative of GEM, was that word. And I mean, Sarah and I
Yeah.
are laughing about it because it all turned out fine, and I think the majority of people got through. But the reality is that that was certainly playing on my mind throughout
Mm.
med school. Okay, so Sarah, you've got through you've not been terminated. You've gone into the kind of main pool, and you're now classed as a third year student because the year that we skip gets added on. So we're now third year medical students. So how did you find medical school at this point, having been a GEM?
Oh, awful. Really, really awful. I although I was, you probably felt the same, like itching to get through Gem, because you've got that threat of termination looming over you this whole time. And I also had a lot of like financial problems while I was going through that as well. And I was worried that I was going to get kicked out because I couldn't pay my med school fees.
Yeah, because
Sorry.
you were working as well, weren't you? You weren't just doing GEM. You were working as a HCA at that point to sustain your.
Yeah,
So you were balancing both of those things.
yeah. Yeah, I was. I just a very, very brief tangent. I messed up. my finances big time. And I thought that I was eligible for a loan that would have helped me massively with my tuition fees and would have helped me with some of my living costs. And I've I can't remember the exact reason, but I wasn't eligible for it after all. And the loan that I was eligible for didn't cover enough of it all, and I had to cover loads of it myself. And I didn't have enough in savings. In fact, I basically had no savings because I'd spent it all on an amazing trip to Australia. So, shed your tears and play your tiny violins for me. But it meant that I chose to work to support myself through medicine. And I'm really glad I did, but it was really flipping hard to balance all of that. I mean, not as hard as being a mum, but it was
Yeah,
a
we
challenge.
haven't mentioned it. I had a chart. If you've seen, I assume that you've seen some of my other videos, or you've seen me on social media. So when I started GEM, I had a 15-month-old. And by the end of our first year, by that year, at the 12-month point, I was on my own as a single parent as well. So, but this, in fairness, I think this is the journey for a lot of people who are older medics. In that, Sarah wasn't eligible for all the loans she might have been eligible for. She'd done medicine as a first degree. And, there was one girl who's living in her car because, or people have got mortgages because obviously you've got a life by the time you're kind of, 25 and cracking on to graduate entry medicine. And so, it's like we were saying, those things kind of make you better communicators. But I think in terms of GEM, people do come to that course with more baggage. Do you agree?
Mm. Yeah, for sure.
So you were working and you were doing medicine, and that was difficult.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so I was kind of like excited to get through the end of GEM, but also quite apprehensive about starting clinical years because suddenly you leave your little GEM incubator, all the little chicks have hatched, and we're all like running off and scurrying off to our clinical placements. And you're no longer in this like safe environment where you go in 9 to 5 every day, you know who you're going to be with, you know what's going to happen. You're suddenly on the wards, and from one day you might be in a certain clinic, which is on one side of a hospital. The next day you might be in an operating theatre, the other side of the hospital, and your timetable's all over the place. The communication from the med school is, can be a bit erratic at times. You don't know where you're meant to be and when. Um, and my first placement was in the arse end of nowhere. Like I was in the furthest away placement that you could be from our medical school. And so
They
that
sent
was challenging.
you to
Kind
Boston.
of,
They sent you.
yeah.
I think I remember that.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I might have shed a tear when I found out that I was going there.
so, I've one of the things I messaged Sarah before we started this video, and I was like, "Can I share these photos of us?" Because obviously Sarah and I have known each other obviously for a really long time, and we did end up doing a placement together. And I think I can't remember what it was. I don't know if it was psych, but you would always bring in a cake, and it would always be like a healthy cake, like it would be made of cucumbers,
Yeah.
and it would be. I would be like, "How would she create? Like it'd be a courgette cake or something like that."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't made me a courgette cake for a while. I think I'll have to request one. I don't remember what placement that was actually because they do all kind of blur. But I mean, the thing that I remember about the clinical years was that it felt to me like where Jem was, someone, because it was a new course, it was 10 years old, I think, when we started. So I think
Yeah.
we were the 10th cohort, um, which in my opinion is the most important one, except the first one.
Yeah, but think they've got the 20th cohort now.
God, no, we're so old. Um, so the thing that I always felt about Gem was that someone had sat there recently, obviously within, 10 years, and had really thought about how to design that course. And I felt that, like I felt that everything was handled. And they basically said to you, if you show up, if you come to the lessons, if you do what you are supposed to do, we will get you through this. And I felt that. But I mean, once we got into the clinical phase, it was just really badly organized and really terrible, like really bad pastoral support and things like that. And I did struggle. It was much easier. Like I remember thinking this is way easy compared to Gem, but I definitely felt like, well, I definitely struggled because it just felt completely unsupported. And it's a feeling actually I don't think I've ever felt quite so supported in medicine since leaving GEM. Like foundation
Yeah,
well supported, CST is not well supported, and you kind of feel like you're on your own, kind of floating through
yeah,
medicine, which I think is something that obviously feeds in massively into the work that you're doing at the moment. And it's a shame, really, that more medical education can't replicate how GEM was with like giving people these pods. And one of the things that I always talk about is there was, and I should mention this, is that there was on GEM a bit of a toxic mentality in that. So I, as a parent of non-science background, I was working every single hour, like all the time, apart from between like 5 and 7 when I put my son to bed. And everyone else seemed to be just kind of floating. And I was like, gosh, why am I doing like 70-hour weeks? And my friend was like, forget that. They're not telling the truth. They're also working all the time. And there's this like vein that runs through all of medicine because we're constantly pitched against each other. So we ranked at the end of
yeah,
medical school to get our foundation jobs. And there is a sense, as much as PBL tries to form these wonderful warm pods, and they were wonderful, there is a sense that underlies that of holding some stuff back because you are my competitor. And it is something that I've talked about a lot in my own kind of YouTube and things like that in terms of like study skills. Is like one of the things that's really important for medicine is being able to grab hold of someone that's like your ally, even if you're going through the same competitive process, to grab that person and be like, we're going to do this together, we're going to study together, we're going to do the back and forth.
yeah,
And it would be really wonderful to see med schools kind of adopting less of a competitive, like you're against you, and more of like, I would almost like to see a form group that goes all the way through medical school, where you've got like 8 people and you might be on different placements or different halves of the year, but once a week you all meet on Zoom or something like that with a pastoral lead or something like that, and then get supported all the way through. Because I really feel like that's a lesson that I learned from GEM, that is a real strength to have a group of people, even where there is competition.
yeah.
Because there's a lot we could do, isn't there, Sarah? I think in terms of supporting medical students, in terms of well-being and burnout and things like that. What do you think?
I so agree with you. I think you're so right in that I haven't experienced anything like that support that we had when we were in GEM, and like you said, it was designed with the student in mind. And I think these other courses, including the undergrad course at our university, were designed a long time ago and kind of haven't really been thought about since, and have just been like, this is what works, this is what we do, we're going to carry on doing it that way, and has been for years. And medicine as a career, although you're working in big teams a lot of the time, although you're seeing a vast number of different people every day, can be very, very isolating. Because if you think about being a doctor on call, you might be working across a number of different wards, and so you're covering different wards, you're going around the hospital. You're not actually working with anybody. You are just on your own a lot of the time. And the nature of our shift patterns means that it's also quite isolating. And I think you're absolutely right that we desperately need in the medical field more togetherness. We need more pastoral care. We need more people looking out for our medical students and our doctors, and looking after, not necessarily looking after our mental health, but giving us this sense of togetherness.
Yeah.
We're all in it together.
Yeah, and I think you really need that because I said this when I was talking to Ollie in my last video, but no one really understands us. So, Ash, my husband, is a wonderful man. He's so supportive. He does not understand what it is like to be trying to get to grips with the Krebs cycle. He does not understand what it is like to be on an F1 shift at 3 a.m. Like I love him. He's wonderful, but he just doesn't get it. And so, like doctors, I feel like are the only people who really truly understand what it is like to be me, and the pressures and the stress and the finance and all of that stuff. So I think peer-to-peer support for us is so important. And for me, that is a takeaway from GEM that I think we could do better.
Mm.
And so,
Also, I think that we could learn from our nursing colleagues, because I feel like in some ways they've designed nursing school in a better way than our medical school. In that, if you look at, like, you think about nursing students who are on the ward with you, they are assigned to nurses as their mentor for a period of time. They do the same shifts as that mentor, and they're basically like an apprentice. They're shadowing the nurse, they're doing the jobs, they're getting involved. Whereas when you're a medical student, you might be assigned a ward, but you rock up there at a time. You might be assigned to turn up to that ward at 9 a.m., but handover was at 7:30 that morning, so you've missed it. And then you're just like there wandering around the ward, kind of feeling untethered and like
Hi.
awkward. Am I in the way? Like, can I get involved in that? You don't really know what you're meant to be doing. You've got certain things you need to be signed off, but you're not assigned to anyone.
Yeah.
And I think that we could support our medical students better by making medical school more like that mentorship role that or mentorship model that an apprenticeship model that nursing school has. Because nursing students, when they graduate and they go into their role as a nurse, they seem a lot more prepared practically than we are.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I mean, so as we move on to talking about the foundation program, I think you've kind of segued that beautifully because I think a lot of people feel like there's a huge gulf between, final day of med school and day one foundation. And so my sister is a nurse. She doesn't really do nursing so much anymore, but certainly by the time she was a final year nurse, she was doing the job. She would be like, she was responsible for a bay, as she would be as a registered nurse, and there was support in place for her. But she was doing the job with supervision. Whereas as a medical student, you're not really doing the job. You're learning the job. You're not performing the job. And so, for me, in terms of how GEM translated to foundation, I'm not really sure that there was a huge amount of difference between me and my undergraduate colleagues, other than this stuff that I rocked up to the course with, like I was a bit older and I've got good communication skills. And I don't know if you felt like you were more prepared or whether you felt the same.
No, I think I felt the same, that I did feel like I've got good communication skills, and I think GEM helped us a lot with that. There was a heavy focus on communication skills in GEM.
Yeah.
But I think by the time you graduate from GEM or undergrad, I think you're pretty much all at a level. It's a level playing field in most respects.
Yeah, I mean, I think that too. And I think those kind of final years when you're kind of like mingling with everyone, everything kind of does level out. You're not working any harder, I don't personally don't think, than the undergraduates.
Mm.
In terms of your career, Sarah, what do you think GEM kind of has given you at this point in your career?
Oh, that's a really nice question. GEM's given me so much. It's it's given me a strong work ethic. I think I had that before anyway, but as we both do, but it showed me what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
You kind of have this feeling, don't you, that like if you can get through GEM, you can get through anything.
Yes, it's like boot camp,
It
isn't it? Medicine.
it really is, yeah. And like I kind of touched upon earlier, it taught me to collaborate more with people. It taught me that I don't have to just get my head down and work on things on my own and like hide away, do the work, come out and then, hand in the work. It taught me to talk with my peers and also realize that sometimes my way isn't the best way of doing things. That I remember I won't name any names, but there was a girl on our course who was in one of my PBL groups and she was amazing. She was like this bright spark of a human being. And I remember doing a bit of studying with her, and the way she studied was so different from how I study. And she just got things done that quickly. She was like, "Oh, let me just bash this out now. Let me do this quickly. Oh, we've got this project we need to do. I'm just going to quickly do the work for it now." She got it done, and I was like, "Oh, it actually gets to be easier than I'm making things so much harder for myself." And so it taught me to start looking for other ways of doing things and that my way isn't always right. So I think that's helped me in my medical career.
I mean, it's so true about collaborative learning because learning is something that's deeply personal, and I think that's what you learn at school, isn't it? You you do the work in school, but how you study at home is something that is it's your own method that you kind of just develop organically. And then when you're thrust with these other people on GEM and it's kind of like group learning, you kind of, there's stuff that your brain skips over. And this is why I say all the time about a study buddy is fantastic for study skills, because, you know, when I just did my MRCS Part B and I picked a buddy for that, and we would go through the same source material, and he would have identified a topic that my brain had just completely missed. And I would identify a topic that he'd kind of ignored, because I think our brains are pretty lazy. So sometimes if you don't like something, you over it. But I think you're so right in that GEM is so collaborative. So Sarah and I think, are both, you know, really enjoying talking about this topic, because, and I think if you're watching this video, that's the big takeaway, I think, is that we both feel so warm about this. And so in addition to anything we say about this, ultimately, like, we're not sitting here and going, oh God, it was awful, even though it was so hard. Now, what I want to ask you kind of to round up is kind of about where other people have gone. I mean, they do say there's a bit of a suggestion that some of the non-Oxbridge London universities are basically GP creating factories. And, you know, do you kind of know where other, without naming names, of course, but there is quite a variety, I think, of what people are doing. You know, I know, obviously, I'm doing surgery. I know another surgeon. I know IMTs.
Yeah. I think that there was a push to make us become GPs, and that was like a heavy focus. And they even told us that in GEM. Do you remember we did those like GP days during GEM?
Oh,
And
they
a
were.
couple of our mentors were GPs, and like, you know, we need more GPs. So it's understandable that they would push people to towards that speciality. But there's like, yeah, my friends from med school are doing all sorts of things, and only a handful of them are GPs actually. Mostly, I've got one friend who's a psychiatrist, a few that are in like internal medicine. Um, you're obviously a surgeon. Yeah, and there's just a wide variety.
So you can do anything,
Yeah.
really. I think. I do think I do have to caveat it with, I think, from my own experience, the older you are, the harder it is to do a long training program, because of things like bottlenecks, which I've talked about in a different video, my video with Ollie. And so you can't kind of separate GEM from that. I think now, especially as these bottlenecks are getting worse, the older you come onto this program, I think realistically, in terms of kind of moving through, you do need to be mindful about these bottlenecks and things like that when your career,
Mm.
which is why we made the video. But I think the point that I wanted to make is that people from GEM have gone on to do all kinds of things, right? You know, the doors are open. Um, so my next question is a topical
Oh,
one.
can I interrupt you?
Yes.
What did you want to do when you were in GEM? Did you know you wanted to be a surgeon?
So before I went to med school, I thought I wanted to be a psychiatrist, because it never, my self-esteem was really low. So it never would have occurred to me that I could be a doctor, especially because I didn't have a science background. And then before I went to med school, I decided I wanted to be a psychiatrist. And I didn't know at that point that a psychiatrist was a doctor. So I came into medical school thinking, um, you know, maybe psychiatry. That kind of disappeared relatively quickly. And I think I decided by about fifth year that I wanted to do surgery, but I wasn't, you know, I wasn't one of those people who was kind of like born and knew that they wanted to be like a pediatrician or whatever. Because some people are, right?
Mm.
And actually, Sarah, you are always the story that I use when I talk to medical students about, because some people are like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I always say, well, I've got a friend called Sarah, and you were the only person I remember that wanted to be a GP in med school. Like,
Yeah, I
very
did.
everyone else was like, I want to be a surgeon, I want to be this. Like Sarah was like, no, I'm going to be a GP. And then I remember you saying, because I caught up with you after and was saying, you know, are you going into GP? And you said, no, because what you found about GP was quite lonely. And until you
Yeah,
actually worked the job, you didn't realize that what was important for you was the team dynamic, which is why you liked
yeah,
it. And it's all about kind of, you need to work the job, right?
yeah, definitely. And I think med school does a good job of giving you that experience and foundation years as well,
Yeah.
trying it on for size.
Yeah, and I think you have to do that. And because you have an idea of what a career is, but until you've done and worked in the department, you just don't know what the life is like. So one of the penultimate question I have for you really is, obviously we've got a new government and fees have gone up, and you and I have both come a circuitous route to medicine. We are not people who went to 18, and therefore we have got two sets of fees. And
Yeah.
luckily for me, I went to university so long ago that my first set of fees are like the £3,000 ones.
Yeah, mine too.
If I'd have been a year younger, a year older, I'd have got the 1,000 ones, but I got the 3,000 ones. So
Yeah.
my debts are huge, but they're not as big as people taking my route would have now. So my question for you is, as these fees continue to rise, would you have would you have comprehended doing the same thing again, or would it put you off?
That's a really interesting question. And it's hard to put myself back in the mindset of where I was when I had finished my biomed degree and I was contemplating
Or
GEM.
biomed, even if it was.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think probably at that age, I didn't have a concept of, you see these large numbers, like you see a £3,000 fee, you see a £9,000 fee, you see a bigger fee. It didn't really make any sense to me, those numbers, because the most I'd earned in a month at that point was, I don't know, £1,500 or something like that. I'd never um I what I'm trying to say is I didn't have any idea of what impact that would have on my life. And I don't know if I was going through it again, I don't know if I would be able to understand that and the impact. Now, having said that, we've probably got similar amounts of debt in terms of our university fees. Um, and although they are large amounts of money, I don't this is probably going to sound a bit controversial. I don't agree with the large fees that university students have to pay, but I don't think that it has that much of an impact on me day to day,
Mm. Yeah,
because that money comes out of your pay.
yeah.
I still get to live a nice life. I still get to have a good career. I still get to enjoy time with my family, and it doesn't. It's going to be a long time paying it off, let's be honest, and maybe I'll never pay it off.
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's all, isn't it? That's the thing. And so for me, I think when it comes to medicine, I don't think the rises at that point would have put me off, because Ash always says
mm,
treat it like a graduate tax. So that's,
yeah, that's what Vince says.
yeah, that's how I think of it. Because for me, there was never any option. It was either this is the amount of money, you pay it, or you don't. So it was, do you
Yeah.
want to be a doctor, or there's no other option, right? But whether it would have put me off doing, obviously, so I don't have any A levels, so I came a really odd route to medicine. And the reason that I got here was because the University of Nottingham is a Russell Group university who are willing to take a chance on someone who wrote good essays but didn't have any A levels. And once I'd got through the door and had theology, I was qualified for graduate entry medicine. So, I was fine. But I was very lost when I did that theology degree, and I could have just as easily gone and done something else. And like I said, I paid like £3,000 a year, and that didn't seem hugely intimidating at that time. So whether, if I'd have been like, however old I was, 19, when I went, whether I would have made the same decision again if fees were, whatever they're going to be, like, I don't know what they are, like going to be £12,000. I'm not sure that I would have made that decision at that point. So medicine, if
Mm.
I got there, I would have done it. But whether would have disqualified myself at the humanities degree level is something that I find quite unsettling, actually, because without that step, I wouldn't be here. Uh,
Yeah, so true. I think it's hugely unfair. I feel quite divided on it because mm, deep down, I feel that university students or prospective university students shouldn't have to worry about that side of things. And I think it is deeply unfair that is that graduate tax, or that,
yeah.
that amount of money that people are having to have to bear afterwards as debt. But I also feel that being a doctor is a privilege, and that anything I've done in life is hard. The harder things are more worth it. And whether and there's a cost to entry, whether it's a financial cost, whether it's a time cost, whether it's an effort cost, there is a cost to entry into spaces that most people don't get into.
Yeah.
And like, for example, I'm doing a new coaching qualification at the moment. You touched on the fact that I'm doing like burnout coaching. Well, I'm doing another qualification in it, and that's costing me about, I don't know what it is in pounds, but it's 10,000 US dollars for a 6 month program. And it's really flipping hard work. Like it is really difficult. And I just think that that is the way of the world, that you have to be prepared to put some skin in the game. You have to be prepared to pay the price, whatever that is, if you really want to do this thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think medicine is about giving a pound of flesh everywhere, isn't it? I mean, this is a career that is going to take from you every which way. Um, Looking back, having done everything that you've done and experienced everything that you've experienced, what are your tips for, firstly for people that are taking the GAMSAT? It's a really horrible exam. I think most of us hate that. And what are your tips for anyone who's thinking about doing GEM?
Ooh, okay. So to answer your first part of your question, GAMSAT, um, prepare early, start preparing early. And if you don't have a science background, get some science, GCSE or A level revision books, work through the questions in those, test yourself, try and make it as easy as possible for yourself to study these things. And there's so much, we're so lucky these days to have the resource like YouTube. There's so many resources on there for evidence-based study tips. So have a look at those and try and make it as easy for yourself as possible, make it efficient so that your whole life isn't consumed by studying. Also with the GAMSAT, when we did it, I don't know if it's the same still, but you had to pay, it was quite an expensive exam to sit, I remember.
Yes, I remember thinking that when we did it, it was about £300 a pop.
Yeah,
Don't
it was
know.
a lot of money.
Yeah, and the materials were expensive as well, like the mock tests. I imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking 11 years ago. I imagine it's much more than that now.
Yeah, I imagine so. I haven't actually had a look, but I remember umming and ahhing about whether to sign up and buy the revision materials because, it's a lot of money. And I would highly recommend doing it. Pay for the past papers and
Yes.
treat them seriously. So we've talked about having skin in the game, putting the effort in, put the effort in to do those tests as if you are sitting the exam. It's a
Yes.
long exam, it's 5 hours. So practice in time. So set yourself some time aside, start a timer, start that exam, eat the snacks that you would eat on the day, drink the drinks that you would drink on the day, and make it as uncomfortable for yourself in advance as possible, so that when the real day comes around, you're not like, whoa, you're like, hey, I've been through this before.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah's advice here is absolutely golden. So, if I can tell you anything about the GAMSAT, is that it is designed as an endurance exam to throw out. Remember, this exam is designed to get rid of people. They want to get rid of the numbers of people that are applying. So it is deliberately a long exam. So when Sarah says sit there and do the tests, you need to, take out a Saturday and sit there and do them one after the other and do that. Not just doing not just answering the questions, but doing it as an exam, because it is an exam of exam technique as well as knowing stuff. So totally agree with that. And Sarah,
Mm.
tips for prospective GEM students?
Tips for prospective GEM students. I would say, so before we started GEM, and actually I get questions about this from people in my audience. I'm sure you do as well. I get people saying to me like, oh, what should I do in my summer before GEM? Do you think I should get some more work experience? Do you think I should do, should I start revising in advance and preparing? No. Have as much fun as you possibly can before you start GEM. I'm not saying that GEM's not fun, but like throw yourself into life, go on holidays, spend loads of time with your friends and family, like enjoy that time before you start. And when you are on GEM, there might be some pre-work for you to do, like do that, but don't go over and above. When you start GEM, that's the time to throw yourself into it. My advice, just similar to what I said about the GAMSAT exam preparation, I would strongly encourage people to learn how to study efficiently. so that you're not pouring every hour under the sun into gem, because you need rest, you need time off, you need time to hang out with your friends, you need time to be with your family. So learn how to study and get things done as quickly as possible so that you've got that time.
Yeah, I mean, all of that is so true. And in terms of study skills, don't forget to subscribe because I make loads of those types of videos. And I have done this course and I have learned the hard way. Um, and Sarah is so right about enjoying yourself and just about remembering that graduate entry medicine is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And it is about more and more, I think we understand how important resilience is and not burning out. And I mean, Sarah really does practice what she preaches, because I remember when we were in the run up to one of those big exams that we were talking about earlier, I don't know whether it was year one or year two, but I was being really stressed about it. And I remember complaining to Sarah, and Sarah was just like, yeah, I couldn't decide whether to study or to go on a long run. And I was like, oh God, I would definitely be. I enjoy studying and I hate running, so I know what my choice would have been. She was like, yeah. She just stood chill. She was just like, silent. She was like, yeah, I decided to go on a long run. Absolutely the right choice. And I was like, how is she so calm? I was like, by this point, like my nails were like this big, my hair was like this. Yeah, I was a bit of a mess. So
But I do want to make it clear, I was not one of those people who tried to make out that I didn't study. I worked my butt off in gem. And you know, it's really funny that people made out that they didn't work, because the stuff that you're learning in medical school is like you either know it or you don't. Like you have to be in those lectures, understand what the cases are that they're giving you, understand the material, and like learn that and then move on. It's not stuff that you can just know through being an intelligent being. And it
osmosis.
cracked me up. I remember this one guy being like, oh, he didn't turn up to one of the lectures, and then he was like, oh, I didn't study for this exam and I didn't prepare for all this stuff, and then he like absolutely aced it. And I was like,
Yeah,
well,
you
you
did.
know, you did. You're just lying, because
I hate
you know,
this.
you can't just absorb that knowledge through osmosis.
I hate this. I think it comes from a fear of failure. Like, if I tank this exam, I want to pretend like I didn't study for it. And I
Yeah.
personally, and that's why I do this channel, because I'm not afraid for you to see me fail, because I think it's really bad for people's mental health. For some of us just to be like, yeah, I passed this and I passed that, and it's so easy, I didn't put any effort in. Actually, if you are in this career, you are working your arse off. I don't care who you are. And some of them just won't admit it. And it plagued me for about 10 months until one of my friends was like, they are working. They're just not admitting it.
Yeah.
Fine, I am normal. I am normal. It's not just
One of my favorite phrases is I don't know who said it originally, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And it is so true.
it's true. It is
We
true.
have to work hard.
You do. This is not a career for, like savants effectively. I mean, you can have great study skills, you can be really clever, but you've got to put the hours in. So
Yeah.
this is our kind of ultimate guide to graduate entry medicine. Please, if you have any questions about graduate entry medicine for Sarah or I, please put them in the comments below. Thank you so much for coming along. And remember, please don't forget this. This is, probably the biggest soundbite from the whole thing, is that at one point Sarah and I were desperately dreaming of being on graduate entry medicine and getting a past GAMSAT score and, that first day of med school. And then we were dreaming of, getting past that 18 months, graduating from med school, getting our foundation placements. And we did it. And look at us now, we're like 11 years on, and this is kind of ancient history to us. And if you keep going, this will be you, and you will be 11 years past your first day of med school. And people message me all the time, like, I did it, and you're gonna get
Oh,
there. Just keep going, because what you dream of at the moment can be your past, and that is what we are showing you today. So thank you so much for coming. Please do like and subscribe. Thank you so much.